Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Fam-Based Podcast. I was this close to saying the Intersect, and I was like, oop, nope, we
Yes,
had a brand
whoopsies.
change.
Yes, we did.
Yes, we did. So today is the other part of this little mini series where we're talking about when charting sucks. And as I corrected in the last episode when we were talking about mine, it's when charting blows massive chunks for different reasons. Obviously, for me, it was more about not being able to chart to avoid pregnancy. And now we're going to talk about the other side of that coin. What happens whenever you're charting and you're trying to get pregnant and you're identifying health issues? Let's talk about when charting sucks on that end of the spectrum. And of course, my darling friend and coworker, colleague, sister from another mister, Mary, is gonna
Yeah, again, we have both sides of the coin. So
I know that's
here we
why
go.
we did this together.
Yeah.
But of course, we are starting with our messy. So, Mary, take it away because I don't know what my
Yeah.
messy is. My messy is the same as the last
Well,
time we talked. So I'm
right.
like,
That doesn't change. No, I
yeah,
think
no.
appropriately timed. Mother's Day was a little messy. Just like the
Mm-hmm.
idea of Mother's Day and approaching it, that it's taken on so many new forms for me over the years.
Mm-hmm.
As I became infertile, Mother's Day got really hard.
Yeah.
Um, Especially at mass, really, I think that was the biggest thing that made it so hard. Like if it wasn't like for the struggles during mass, I'm not sure it would have gotten so hard. Yeah, sure, it still would be a little bit hard. But yeah, and so now like we have an adopted daughter. She's almost 7. So I've been a mother in that sense for a really long time now, but there's always still this like weird kind of feeling as it approaches, which I really think it's a matter of just appreciating both. And like I am very grateful to have her and my own mother, but also like just want to always hold space for those who are really struggling on the day, that both are present and that we can celebrate it, and but also remember those who are struggling. So it was a good day, but it was just kind of like, like I know it's fine. Let's just not give it too much attention. That's kind of how I felt about it. So that's
Yeah, it's
my
that
messy.
struggle of holding the joy and the pain, like
Yeah.
holding space for, yeah, it's like that your experience obviously opened you up to the awareness of this piece of it that most people are not aware of.
Yeah.
And then there's also this reality, your other reality of being an adoptive mom and the joy that that brings you and how to balance that. It's like,
Yeah.
we don't really know how to do that if we're honest.
I got
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I gotta say, I feel like it was a pretty good day holding both of
Hey,
I do. I
hey,
really think I somehow it was fine. I just kind of let it feel how it felt and it was good.
yeah. I know
Yeah.
it's cliche and it feels I know when I first heard this term, I was like, that is so juvenile. But actually not doing this is what's juvenile, to let yourself feel your feelings.
Oh yeah.
It's like that's literally that's what
That's
helps you
actually
to,
mature.
yeah, it is. It's like it feels very juvenile, but it's very emotionally mature. It's very hard. And
Yeah.
yeah, I don't really know what my messy is because my hair, I still need a haircut. It's happening next weekend. My house is still, my house, the same messy. But I was literally thinking, I'm gonna get a little, I don't know, philosophical. Why do we always think of messy as bad? You know?
Ooh.
I know, right? That's what popped into my head. And I'm not gonna go down a whole tangent because that's a whole podcast episode I don't want to record. Um
No, but I think you're onto something because I don't know. A lot of I'm like you always want to clean up your house when somebody comes. And
yeah.
that's good. Like I'm not saying that's bad, but then like
Yeah.
if people come to your house and it's too clean, they're like feeling uncomfortable. And
Yeah. It's like I don't want to get it
it's like,
dirty.
oh, you don't like your house is dirty. It's like my house is dirty too. Like it's some dirty
Right.
secret. And it's like, yes, I love like I don't mind. I really truly honestly don't mind my house like with a certain amount of mess.
Yeah, me
But if
either.
but I feel like
Me
it's
either.
like I gotta clean it,
Well, it's like
you
it's that
know?
balance between I want like especially as a southern woman, cleaning your house is like a sign of respect for anybody who comes over. But then there is
Yeah.
also that element of like, yeah, but you're basically family, so I don't really care. So, and
Right. And then you
it's
kind of
like,
feel honored. It's like, yeah, I don't care if your house is
yeah, there's
messy. I
like
mean,
it can be both an insult and an honor to come over to a messy house, which is like, I feel like that's the most Southern thing ever.
Right. I mean, within reason. Obviously, there's a balance.
Right.
Like you want to take care of your family and yourself, and
Right.
like let's clean things so we don't get sick and like it's not disgusting. But like, do we need to have everything absolutely pristine? No,
No,
absolutely not. It's like this is
no.
lived in. That's good.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm just getting to this point where I'm like, no, having something messy is not bad. Of course, there's like that cliche, like tacos are messy and we love them. So it's like,
Oh, nice. Yeah.
right. You remember that like tacos fall apart and you just put the other tortilla down on your plate and then you get second taco, right?
That's true. Make it a
Catches all the
salad.
stuff. Yeah, there we go. There we go. So anyway, I guess that's my musing on messy, is that
It
messy
counts.
isn't necessarily bad.
No, I
There
love
we
it.
go. So wait, that's actually kind of a good segue, sort of, kind of.
Mhm.
Look at me go. This is a great way to
No.
start these podcasts. So let's just dive in. So Mary, obviously, we've talked about our stories. Probably most of our listeners are familiar, at least on some basic level, with your story. So let's start with, how did you first learn about fertility awareness and Creighton as an option? And this is interesting. I actually don't think I know this.
Really?
I don't think
Okay.
I, when I wrote, I
Yeah,
don't know,
no.
when we were planning this episode, and I was like, I wrote that question down. I was like, because I felt like this is a good place to start. And I was like, I don't think I know the answer.
It's kind of a funny story, actually. So, hearing about like NFP, I just grew, I don't know when I first heard of it. It was just the thing that you do when you get married, right? Like, and
Right.
that was symptothermal. I did not know there were other method options. And my sister, who's 5 years older than me, when she got engaged, it was like, yay, I'm so excited. Got to set a date, find a church, and set up your NFP class. Like it was this rite of
Like it's this
passage.
naughty thing.
Like, well, I was like, I could say, I was like, yeah, you get to learn NFP now, you know? And so that was my only awareness of it. Um, and so let's see, I was how old when she got engaged? I don't know. We both had like bad cramps though. Like we both had that experience, but neither of us knew that there were like options. It wasn't
Right. Because
until,
this is just your lot in life as a woman.
oh
Like
yeah,
you
totally.
just, your
Deal with
periods
it.
hurt and you're moody and you just need to suck it up and
Deal
deal.
with it. Yeah, we didn't even go to the doctor. Like
Mm-mm.
to even like not until later did I go to get prescribed birth control. We didn't even
You,
go.
you
It
just
was
need
just
some
like
Midol. That's all you
my
need.
mom just like prayed and was sad with us. Like my poor mom didn't know what to do. Anyway,
Yeah.
so no, it wasn't until later. Oh, it wasn't until after I had this really sharp pain on my ovary and I went to the OBGYN and like they did an ultrasound, said I may have an endometrioma, scheduled surgery. And then my mom was like, "Oh, so and so over at church teaches this Creighton model thing." And I had never heard of it. And that was it. I was just like, and at first I was like, actually was like, I don't want to do what my mom says.
Heck no.
And so I actually ignored it for a while. And then I knew this lady too, and I really liked her. Yeah, and then I just started. I didn't know what it was getting into. I didn't know it would help with health or anything like that. Oh no, I must have known someone because my mom was like, you should do this. I don't actually remember. Um, but yeah, that's how it got started. That's weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love the whole, like, whenever your mom suggests something for you to do, it's just like automatically no.
Yeah,
Automatically
exactly.
no. And
Exactly.
I feel bad because I know we do have women who reach out to us, like mothers of daughters who are older, and they're like, how do I get my daughter into this? And on the side, I'm like, don't be the one to suggest it to her.
Or yeah, just don't
I just
overdo it. Yeah.
Right, because, and I mean, like, I say that, like, on the one hand, like, I totally understand, like, as the mother, like, you want to do whatever it takes to help your daughter. But on the other hand, every mother and daughter has baggage, and it's just kind of like ingrained. It's just in our DNA. It's like when mom suggests something,
I
just
gotta
automatically no.
gotta
I don't know
question this
why.
for a while. Yeah.
Yeah, just automatically no. It's like, I don't know
Hmm.
if it's the rebellion or whatever, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay. So obviously, eventually down the road, you became infertile. You got that diagnosis, or even we could call it a label. So when, kind of walk us through how that unfolded. Like, when did that happen, and what was your reaction? And like let's really kind of dig into not just the physical ramifications, because you were already dealing with that with the pain, but let's also talk
Right.
about mentally
Yeah.
how that
So
unfolded.
mentally, so I just kind of assumed, like, even though I got this diagnosis about a year before we got married,
And this is the um
endometriosis. I'm sorry. Yeah, I got
endometriosis. Yeah.
diagnosed with endometriosis like a year or so before we got married. So I had learned that it can cause infertility. I did not think I would be infertile.
Mhm.
I was just kind of blissfully ignorant. And part of it, it was just like, it's just what I'm Catholic. This is what I want to do. Like, this is not going to be an issue for me. I'm just,
I think
um,
about it as like the Catholic Mr. Portcullis, like for everybody who's seen my big fat Greek wedding, like get married, make a baby. This is what we
yes,
do, right?
it's just what I do. This thing ain't gonna hold me
Yeah.
back. So,
Yeah.
I wouldn't say I ever got, I mean, clearly I got the diagnosis, but for me, I think it's kind of weird with infertility because it's not like you get a, I know some people, women get a diagnosis, but
Right.
not like you go like endometriosis, they biopsied and they say you have endometriosis, like you have diabetes. Like these are things that we can say. But with infertility, it's just kind of like nobody really knows because you can get pregnant any cycle, even if the chances are really low. Miracles happen. Women do end up pregnant, or like, you're going through these treatments, things can change. So you have all this hope. So I would say it's just kind of like an over time, this kind
Mhm.
of realization. I think that's different for each woman. It's individual, where you kind of like accept, okay, this doesn't look like it's happening for me. So it
Mhm.
took, for me, I would say like around the 2 year mark, um, 1.5, 2.5 year mark, where I was just like, okay, this is not happening. I've had surgery already. I've been trying these different things, and this is just not happening. And also when I started charting, so I charted for maybe 8 to 10 years, I can't remember. So I started before I was married, and then I stopped right before I had a hysterectomy. But when I first started charting, I can go back and look at my charts, like I had a pretty good mucus cycle. And so over the years, you can see how my mucus cycle went to like 5, 6 days, and the quality matters too, the quality of the mucus
Mhm.
too, but down to absolutely nothing.
Wow.
So, and an unusual bleeding is another part of it too. I had that in the beginning, but that kind of went back and forth over the years. So
Mhm.
it's kind of sad to see this. It's nice to have that progression of things, to see your, like, to have so much information, but at the same time, you can look at to it over the years, just go down to absolutely none.
Yeah.
That was rough.
And I can, as you're describing this, I can imagine, we want to have hope. And but I can imagine that hope just kind of feels like this dangled carrot, and like that longing for hope. I know it says in scripture that hope does not disappoint. I've never understood that scripture passage. Um, because I feel like, this hope that you have, like you're seeing this information, you're seeing that you have, like you said, a good mucus cycle. And every single cycle, it's like, okay, maybe,
Hmm.
and every single cycle, you're disappointed.
Yes.
And like just the toll of that over and over and over again.
You learn to boycott hope. I
Yeah.
mean, and I think what you're saying, it depends on what you hope in. And I think for me,
Yeah.
I remember I just didn't know what to hope in because I'm like, I know I hope in God can do anything. Like he could, I know miracles happen. This is possible. Things are improving, but also like I have to be realistic that this might not
Mm-hmm.
actually happen. And the pregnancy test became such a trigger, like the actual I mean, like the actual pregnancy test.
Yeah, you were
Um,
telling me about that one time. Can you share your experience with
that
pregnancy
was
tests?
such a conundrum because I knew, thank God I never had PMS symptoms, which is common with women with low progesterone. And I had such low progesterone, which again is common with endometriosis, to like estrogen dominance. Or estrogen was really high. My estrogen was like off the charts, but my progesterone was really low. And so I would have to supplement progesterone. So I was also at miscarriage risk, not only because of endometriosis, but because my progesterone was so low. So I did not have the luxury of not taking a pregnancy test
Mm.
because I knew, like, if a miracle happened and I were to achieve a pregnancy somehow, I really need to know as soon as possible so I can make sure my body has enough progesterone to sustain that pregnancy. So that was fun. Because at a point you just want to stop taking them.
Yeah.
And then, but no, like, sometimes if my, period came a little bit later, and for various reasons we don't need to get into, you got to take it. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, that has its own mixed bag. So it's like, how do I go about looking at this pregnancy test? Um, it was just awful.
Yeah.
Do I want to hope? Do I want to like look at it and hope? You can't help but hope, but at the same time, prepare yourself for the letdown. You can't do, I don't even know. You can't do both. So it was just this,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's basically torture.
Yeah, kind of, it
Like
feels like it.
at least on a psychological level, I mean, it sounds like torture, that you're just
Yeah,
having
yeah,
to do this same thing over and over and over and over and over again.
right.
And your cycle length was like how long?
My cycle length was pretty normal. My luteal phase played games with me because what's not super uncommon for women who are infertile is called like unruptured follicles, which can
Mm,
happen in a normal length luteal phase, but sometimes it can mean your luteal phase is longer than usual. And you're not pregnant. It was like an ovulation defect, but
oh,
it makes your period come a little bit late, just like stress can do too. I mean, stress can do the same thing, but I had like confirmed unruptured follicles that would just happen every once in a while. So,
so that compounded the hope for pregnancy even more.
and one of the treatments to increase estrogen and progesterone naturally is HCG injections. So you could get a positive from the HCG if you took it too soon too. So I had to wait a little bit long. Yeah, it was just like a lot of brain
Oh
F's.
my gosh. I feel like I'm also just learn. I didn't know that. Yeah, that brain effery on
Steroids.
like yeah. Okay, so this is kind of I don't know, maybe I'm trying to like take your story and like let's apply it to a larger picture too soon, but obviously like Creighton and Napper technology and the whole restorative medicine approach to our fertility healthcare, like we're all for it.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful, wonderful, good thing. However, there's definitely times where we don't go into it with appropriate expectations. And there's not really, I feel like in some cases, and maybe you felt like this, there's not really an off ramp. The off ramp is getting pregnant. But can you talk about like just kind of from your opinion, your perspective, because you have a unique vantage point. You both use Creighton for health reasons, trying to achieve pregnancy, and you are a Creighton health practitioner. Can you talk about kind of what do you think should be the approach for women? Because I know women find themselves in this conundrum of like they get on this highway of care, but then they kind of end up in these places where you're talking about where it's just this mind f every single cycle.
Yeah.
And we know that mental health has an impact on our overall health, on our cycle health. So can you talk about like what do you think is kind of the approach here? What do you think would be helpful for women to know getting into this, maybe being far down the road? Talk a little about your experience here from both of these perspectives.
Yeah, great question. I wonder if I was kind of spared of that NAPRO like mindset because I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know about like now I think a lot more people are talking about it and you hear it
Yeah.
being recommended and it's like, oh my gosh, it did this for me. And you hear about all these miracle situations and we have all these treatment options now that a lot of women don't know about or that we have now. Well, when I went into it, I knew nothing. So I didn't have
Mm-hmm.
any expectations for this to like save me. It was
Mm-hmm.
also new. I was just like, okay, whatever, like let's do this. Now I had been offered birth control, so I was grateful to have like, oh, there's actually like first of all, they're not going to prescribe me birth control, and I have these options, like all of these things that they can actually do. Um, so I never saw like I never looked at it at I don't know as like a I don't know what I'm trying to say, like a
Like a cure
NAPRO,
all.
like cure all. Yeah, I was
Yeah.
just, I feel like I was able to separate um like, yeah, napro as this thing that's going to save me. Like I didn't feel like I was relying on these doctors or this thing. I was just grateful to have all these things to try. So I
Mhm.
think that, I think women need that, because when you're infertile, you want to try everything. So it's good to have that avenue. However, and this is what I kind of, the way that I try to set it up for my own clients, is really trying to define this as, we're going to focus on your health.
Mhm.
Your desire for pregnancy is really good, and hopefully that will happen, but that's going to be over here for now. I'm here to help you, like, teach you how to read your body, to chart your cycle. And then there's these specially trained doctors that can help heal your cycle. So we're here for your health. Okay.
Mhm.
When you're your healthiest, you're most likely to achieve a pregnancy, but like, I just think mentally and emotionally that just has to kind of be separated. Um, because if you're focused on your health, and I'm talking about holistic health, right? We have physical, we have mental, and we have spiritual. If that is your priority, then you're going to be aware of when my mental health, if that's your priority, like, okay, this is really not right. Now I'm putting this is like going above my other priorities, as far as like myself, my relationship.
Mhm.
um so, and I did come to a point at eventually, I needed to try all that extra stuff first, but eventually it was like, okay. And I think when you talk about feeling broken, so many of us feel broken. I think with infertility, I kind of, with the chart, I'm looking at the chart and I'm basically seeing all the things that are wrong with me,
Mhm.
and I'm infertile. And sometimes the chart looks better, sometimes it doesn't. I was just expecting it to look better. And what I realized later is like, um, it became an indictment on me as a person, rather than something that's just going on with my health. And that's when it
Mhm.
becomes unhealthy. And it was just a really big realization for me. And I think, like, look, it's not like, I mean, I can feel like the devil's advocate over here, but like, no, but something is actually broken, because your body doesn't work the way that it's supposed to.
But I
So
think the way to
technically
frame
that's
it,
true, but
yeah, the way to frame it is your body is telling you something is wrong, which means your body is working,
yes,
but it's telling you that it needs something to be fixed.
yes,
And
absolutely.
I think that most, like you're saying, I think when the focus is on getting pregnant, when the use,
Hold on, you
then
cut out for a second. You said when the focus is on getting pregnant, then what?
when the focus is on what you produce,
Oh, when you produce. Okay.
yeah, when the
Mm-hmm.
focus is on
Yep.
the outcome, on what you
Yep.
produce,
Yep.
then I think that that's when it really does become an indictment,
Yes.
is because it's like, well, I'm not achieving this outcome. And then that's where I think this becomes really insidious, because then we reduce ourselves to means of production.
Right.
We reduce ourselves to objects. And I know, like, I've talked to women who've gone through NAPRO, and this is something that that can be present as they're going through this process. And of course, everybody's like, everybody rebels against that, because we intrinsically know we're not objects, we're
Yes.
persons. And it doesn't just matter what the outcome is, the process also matters, and how we navigate this and how we go through it, how we're treated during this process as whole persons, not just a chart, not just what is going on in your cycle. And I know you were telling me that you had an experience like this with one of your doctors.
Yeah.
um yeah, where
Dr.
this kind
Caldwell.
of came out. Yeah.
Yeah. So this was like 7 years into it. I had already had multiple surgeries, and I just kind of always expected, well, I'm having surgeries. I'm getting fixed, at least in some sense. Like, my chart is supposed to like reflect that. That
Mm-hmm.
was like something that it was just like something that I just believed or told myself. I don't know. So as the surgeries kept happening, and um at some point, like, the chart didn't recover. And I was like, but wait a minute. I had the surgery, like, the chart is supposed to, like, my body's supposed to reflect this in the chart. And the chart is reflecting what my body's saying. Like the chart communicates for my body basically in some ways. And so it was really hard. And that's when I learned, like, oh my gosh, I'm literally looking every day at what is wrong with me and not working. And this is becoming really hard. Like you said, because I'm not, my goal is to decrease pain too. Like that was one side of it. But
Yeah.
really I would have preferred go through the pain if I could have a child. So really having a child was more important to me than getting rid of the pain. And so that wasn't happening. And so I'm like, this is something wrong with me. So I took one of my appointments with Dr. Caldwell, my NAPRO doctor, and I was just cried. I'm like, why isn't this, reflecting what I want it to? And she just really handled my heart well, and she just let me cry. And she talked about expectations, and I realized that I was expecting the chart to tell me something that wasn't true about how my body works. And she was like, what was great was that she gave me full permission to stop charting. She was like, you don't have to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And I really needed that freedom, but she also gave me some other ways to think about it. So what was really helpful is to come home and be like, I knew I could stop charting if I wanted to. I ended up and I was really considering stopping going into that appointment, but um, I sat and I was like, okay, I can't expect the chart to lie to me. This is just telling me the truth about how my body works. And I just need to be honest about what it's telling me and let it tell me that basically. I don't know why that was just kind of a helpful helpful to look at my expectations and really what I was expecting to see. And once that changed, I was able to do it a little bit longer. Until I stopped before my hysterectomy.
Well, I think that speaks to the value of being witnessed, the importance of that. That it's not so much important to take the pain away as it is to know that you're accompanied and that you're seen in what you're experiencing. And I think that's where a lot of people probably get it wrong. And because it's like you see somebody in pain, it's like, okay, well, it's my job to take it away. You're coming to me with a
Yeah.
problem, I must fix it. It's like, no.
Yeah.
That's not how this works. Because the reason why I'm coming to you is because I just need to get this out there. I just need to speak the truth here. Kind of like, I think, and this is something that's always stood out to me in our conversations and in conversations with other women, is that the pain of infertility, like you said, you would have gone through the physical pain if it meant you could have a child.
I did. Yeah.
That's how great that desire for a child is that you are willing to push through and continue to put yourself through this torture and like taking, pregnancy tests every cycle and look at all of this because you want a child. And that's a good thing to want. And I think it just speaks so much to that desire is so huge. You're willing to go through all of this to get there. And that's where I think I want to be careful in saying a danger, but that's where I think NAPRO can get really, and restorative healthcare can get, I don't want to just single out NAPRO, just restorative healthcare in general can become problematic. Because yes, that is a good, but what are you sacrificing in the wake? A lot of women will talk to me about how the impact on their marriage, that sex kind of becomes utilitarian and then it just kind of loses its fun. It's like we're doing this to make a baby. Mm-hmm. We're targeting this to make a baby. And sometimes it's not always the case that they're told like you were, that it's okay to take a break. And that actually is, and I can understand, like in your mind, you're like, wait, no, I can't miss a cycle because what if this is the cycle where we could conceive, right? I could understand that there's that hanging over you. But could you talk a little bit about obviously being witnessed is certainly one, but what do you think those coping strategies are as you're going through this process? You're focusing on health, but there is still that very strong, very understandable desire for the outcome of a baby. What is this balancing this? What is that coping strategy? What are those coping mechanisms potentially look like?
I think, and it kind of factors in when you're considering artificial reproductive technologies too. I think that like when coming back to the human person and just the emphasis that we put on having a child and the balance that needs to come back, because I think that it's such a sensitive topic for so many people. It's really hard to address. Um, but there is a level where having a child becomes such a high priority. It becomes a priority over yourself and your relationship. And I think um, I want to be really sensitive and respectful. And I mean, I've been there. But you can kind of tell when that focus, it just becomes too high.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it helps just remembering what the goodness of your marriage is, what the goodness of you just as you are is. And really, I think finding a good counselor. I mean, we always talk about that, trying to get rid of the stigma of mental health, like therapy and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. Um, and I think it's being grounded by, yes, my desire to have a child is really good, but it is not everything in my life. It is not more important than my own mental health. It is not more important than my relationship. And just really being sensitive, I think, which is hard for any of us, whether it's
Mm-hmm.
infertility or not, just to be grounded, to know how to like stay regulated and be able to truly discern what's supposed to happen next. Um, I think that's really hard, and that's
Mm-hmm.
okay, but that's why I like to focus on health, because like whether or not you're trying to achieve a child, it is good to get your body healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And oh, did you hear that or did I just hear that?
I did not. I think you just heard it. What
Okay.
happened?
It was just a loud noise. Okay.
All good on my
Oh my God.
end.
Yeah. Um, I don't even remember what I was saying now.
Oh, and you were on a
But
really good roll, and I blanked
oh,
too.
oh no, I mean, hey, it happens. Um, just think it's perspective. I
Yeah.
really I see women on Instagram, and I don't know if I've just been doing this a long time or even in my clients, like it's not something you call out, but it's like you can just tell by the language or like the body language or actually the language that they use. You can tell like, okay, this needs to kind of come back into balance a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
it's just I don't think there's a really good understanding of you can have peace and joy without a pregnancy. That's where I am now.
Yeah.
And it's I mean, but I mean, it's taken me a while to get here. It wasn't easy. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying there becomes a place where it becomes a little more desperate. And and so at that point, I think it's just about tempering that and just saying like, okay, do I really need this?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's a really hard way to gut check,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and like you said, for you, it was a process to get there. And I think the process is important. Whatever
Yeah.
process it takes for somebody to get to that point is not so much that you arrive at the destination. It's how you get there.
Yeah.
And however long it takes to get there is fine. But you did get there eventually. Can you talk about that, kind of that shift for you? Because I remember I've always been struck by this when you told me that pregnancy does not heal the wounds of infertility. And when I experienced secondary infertility and then got pregnant, I was like, oh, she's right. Nothing went away. It was all still there. It was just dialed up. So can you talk
I'm so
about,
glad you brought that out because there's
yeah,
this facade that when you're infertile and you're trying to get, whether it's secondary or, primary, whatever, it's just like, yes, having a baby is what's going to solve my problems.
yeah,
How does that statement sound? Like,
yeah.
what? No, having a baby is not going to solve anyone's problem. It's a good thing. But I've talked to several women once kind of realized this, and it's like, no, you're right. I got pregnant after infertility, and like that wound was still there. And I think
Mm-hmm.
because it's touching on things that were never addressed. If we just focus all our energy on trying to achieve a pregnancy and not actually on internal growth and like, okay, why is this so hard for me? And what is the wound it's tugging on? And am I upset with God? Okay, like a lot of it, I think for a lot of people, whether you're Catholic or not, it always comes back to God. I think a lot of us do that because he can do anything and we kind of hold him
Mm-hmm.
responsible. I know I did. That's for sure. And it becomes this then indictment on God as well as
Mm-hmm.
ourselves. of
Mhm.
why didn't you do this thing for me that is good and that I want and that like you want me to have. But there's
Mhm.
just so much more going on. If we just hone in only solely on focusing on getting pregnant, we miss all that other stuff. Trying to
Yeah.
like walk the line of not getting too theological here.
No, you're
Um,
doing a great job. I love it.
but yeah,
Of course,
so I
I'm not
mean,
exactly an
I
unbiased.
know you're a little biased, but
Oh, it sounds great,
I
but
think if
I
you're a
drink the
spirit,
same Kool-Aid as
I
you.
know if you're a spiritual person, okay, I think of it as like you know God, God's will is not aligned with yours right now. And that is a hard pill to swallow for anybody. If you're not a spiritual person, it's more like, okay, I don't know what the universe is not giving me what I want, but there's still something else going on there because we don't need a baby to satisfy us. Like
Mhm.
we can still be happy and at peace and content if we don't ever have that pregnancy. And I'm living proof. And that's why eventually it took me a long time to get here. But I was like, I remember thinking about myself back then. And I'm like, I want people to know this is possible.
Mhm.
Okay. I am more than okay. I have never had a pregnancy. I never will. But I don't need it to be, it'll
Mhm.
be a pain. I'm not saying that it's not gonna
Mhm.
be hard. It is hard, but this doesn't limit me
Yeah.
by any
Yeah.
means. So let's talk about that. Let's not
Mhm.
just have this facade of okay, if you get pregnant, everything's fine.
Yeah. Well, and I think there is a limit, and there is a door that was closed. But the point was is that didn't close you in this dark room. It was just, there's a door over there.
Yes.
As so go through that one.
Yes.
And what is that? And it's going to be different, and it's not what you originally wanted.
That's right.
But it's not necessarily better or worse. It's not a competition because they're just different things.
Mm-hmm.
And you still walked through a door of fruitfulness, just it was just a different door.
Yeah.
And I know that that's something that you've talked about a lot, and we've talked about a lot, this idea of like fertility and fruitfulness is not being confined or limited by biology.
Yeah.
Obviously that's a beautiful, wonderful, that's a cross in and of
Course.
itself, but
Yeah.
it's different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then you don't have to use the term fruitfulness. I think that infertility and treatments, whatever that treatment is, all the efforts, there's a point where it becomes huge
Mm-hmm.
distractions on like who I'm actually am and I'm good at and like things I do actually want to do, but this other
Mm-hmm.
thing has taken over.
Yeah.
In the spiritual world, we kind of use the term fruitfulness, but it's not, no matter what your spirituality is, it's like, no, you have gifts. You're really good at
Yeah.
things. Things
Yeah.
really like make you passionate. You have purpose, and that
Mm-hmm.
feels really good.
Yeah. Whether you have kids or not, you're not a one-hit wonder.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that's a
Okay.
good place to wrap up. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. Check the show notes if we link to anything. I don't think we're linking to anything
I
today. We
don't
didn't
think it
really
was just
mention anything.
all us.
We can link to your book again. We're going to link to your book again. If you'd like
Okay.
to know more about Mary's story, if what we said today, inspired you, you'd like to go a little deeper, obviously follow us on social media. But Mary also wrote a memoir of her journey through infertility and finding the meaning that we were talking about today. So check that out. We will link that in the show notes. Thanks for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you, hearing you again.
You hearing us soon.
Yeah, there we go. You're going to hear us again soon. That sounds ominous.
Oh, yeah, it does. That's okay. Take care.